They said I was a miracle baby. I was conceived despite a 99% effective IUD. Then I survived the miscarriage of my twin. After that, survived a series of medical treatments that should have aborted me. No one knew that Mom was still pregnant. It was a world before ultrasound, a world of hippies, Elvis, psychedelic drugs, and Vatican II. Why am I telling you this? Because I believe this film is the reason I was born. After years of research and 2 other related films, I've come across shocking discoveries that help explain today's cultural chaos. And it finds its basis in mysticism. Mystics claim that all wisdom comes from inside you, that you're already God, a so-called spark of divinity, an immortal soul, that altered states of consciousness reveal true reality. Perhaps the biggest influence during this era was the Second Vatican Council, known as Vatican II, launched in Rome with more than 2,000 Catholic bishops from around the world. Vatican II helped pave the way for interfaithism, promoting unity between the world's religions by sharing the Catholic Church's mystic treasures, that is, its contemplative traditions. The Council documents declared, "Since the contemplative life belongs to the fullness of the Church's presence, let it be put into effect everywhere." The term contemplative life was historically related to various monastic orders of monks and nuns whose lifestyles are oriented towards ascetic practices and contemplative prayer, a form of mysticism.
We were asked by the Vatican to get involved in dialogue with Eastern meditation and with Eastern monasticism as the area in which Christianity had the most common basis.
Couldn't we put this rich Christian tradition that we've experienced as monastics into a form that would be available for contemporary people who go for these how-to methods?
The packaging, in a sense, was influenced by Eastern methods of meditation.
And it's also a place where, incidentally, we've met the New Age movement a great deal because we've kind of integrated some of their ideas.
According to Vatican II, they would play the main role in the evangelization of the world. And that's exactly what happened.
And so I invite you now to close your eyes as the symbol of letting go of your own concerns for these 20 minutes. The centering prayer period is like taking a little vacation from ourselves and our concerns. We don't even think about God. We choose a symbol, which can be a word or the breath, perhaps an inward glance towards this presence. So the slightest movement towards this presence simply activates a presence that already exists. It's an exposure of our inmost being and the contents unknown to us of our unconscious that we're opening to God and to our deep self.
While he was promoting centering prayer, including at Protestant churches, Catholic monk Thomas Keating broke more ground for Vatican II's interfaith dialogue mandate. In 1984, he gathered a group of mystics from Buddhist, Hindu, Jewish, Islamic, Christian, and Native American shaman traditions to meditate together in silence and to search for common ground. After 20 years of annual meetings, the groundbreaking book The Common Heart was published. Some of their points of agreement included: ultimate reality cannot be limited by any name or concept. Spiritual authority is based in an experience of ultimate reality and comes from within. The individual soul is none other than the divine. We give authority to Holy Scriptures based upon our confidence in their ability to help others reach the greater authority, self-knowledge. These points of agreement are quite different from the major religions, whose teachings are very different from each other also.
You could say the fingers represent the 5 religions, and they're separate in their doctrines and dogmas, like the fingers are. But the fingers lead to the center of the palm, and the various religions, on their deepest level, lead to the center of reality, where they are one, but they're different expressions of that reality.
The inner circle of mystics find common ground based on shared mystical experiences. Christians call it contemplation or silence. For Hindus, samadhi or bliss. For Zen Buddhists, satori. Different terms for the same thing.
As Bergson points out, we have the ability to know every event, the infinitely infinite number of events going on in all realms, all universes, and right here, now. If we're aware of that all the time, all we could be is that, and shed the bodies and everything. But that's what we are. And so entering into this meditation, I think so many forms of meditation bring you to that place, ultimately. And it has different names, but it goes to the same place.
Jesuit author William Johnston wrote, "It is particularly relevant for our day, when science is exploring altered states of consciousness that are not unlike the states toward which the mystic points." Karl Rahner, foremost 20th century Jesuit theologian and engineer of Vatican II, emphatically predicted, "The Christian of the future will be a mystic, or he will not exist at all."
In engaging with contemplative prayer and this passive way of being, I felt it benefited me so much that I wanted to be able to learn to teach this to other people.
Stephanie enrolled in training programs referred to as spiritual formation, a curriculum based on ancient monastic practices with contemplative prayer as the foundation.
They advertise on their website that it's rooted in Christian tradition. When I get into the classroom, I'm in there with Wiccans and Satan worshipers and atheists, Buddhists, you name it, they were there.
Their studies included a form of Bible study called Lectio Divina, or divine reading, the goal of which is to prepare the mental faculties for union with God.
Lectio is a marvelous means because it tries to prepare all the faculties for union with God.
Union with God, or becoming one with God in an altered state, supposedly taps into the true self, which they say is the core goodness in every person, which is immortal and not separate from God. Catholic monk Thomas Keating leaves no doubt what mystics believe about the nature of man. God and our true self are not separate. Though we are not God, God and our true self are the same thing. Paul Knitter is a well-known Catholic author, student of Buddhism, and former student of Jesuit theologian Karl Rahner. The unity between what I call God and myself is not just a case of God acting in me, but me being God. What Stephanie didn't know at that time is that Christian mysticism eventually requires a reinterpretation of the Bible.
What we're talking about is beyond human concept and therefore beyond human language. That means all the language that we hear from the Bible or in sermons, engage it, but don't take it literally.
Oh, well, he certainly isn't upset because someone bit into an apple. You understand? But I understand how you have to teach mythic stories, but most people don't know how to understand sacred texts. They really don't.
Listen to the leading voices of this post-Vatican II movement describe what they say is true reality about creation, Jesus Christ, and the nature of man.
Most of us have not been taught how to distinguish Jesus from Christ.
We so lumped them together, and we lost the massive truth. In fact, what we lost was a basis for a universal religion, a natural religion. Christ is not an individual, Christ is a collective.
In fact, most Christians think it's his last name. They operate as if Christ is his last name, when in fact it's a description of his function in history. We know the word means the anointed one, and that anointing began, we believe, with the first incarnation, right? The first incarnation, some billions of years ago, we now call the Big Bang, when God decided to show God's self. You want to see what I'm like? Voila, here it is.
In everything visible your eyes have ever seen. What else could it be but the body of God?
As Teilhard de Chardin taught in his day, every particle is filled with Christ. And we're just trillions of them put together with some kind of order by somebody.
This is the definition of panentheism, a Christianized form of pantheism or animism, where all of creation is penetrated with God's essence, which makes everything divine and worthy of worship.
And bow to them.
Even the rocks and the trees.
My own father, St. Francis, who's the first recorded person to speak of brother sun, sister moon, sister fire, brother water. It's all sacred.
While watching people on the streets, Catholic monk Thomas Merton had an epiphany. If only they could all see themselves as they really are. I suppose the big problem would be that we would fall down and worship each other.
The true mystic wants to kneel and kiss the ground every day. He lives, she lives in a sacred universe.
We're growing up in God, and evolution is the birth canal into divine life itself.
And the second coming of Christ is you, and the second coming of Christ is still happening. It's not one event, it's the rest of history.
Panentheism can be more clearly understood by one of its synonyms, incarnation.
The first incarnation is creation. The personal incarnation happened 2,000 years ago, we believe as Christians, which is Jesus.
He woke up fully to his divine consciousness, to the divine spirit that was given in his very being. And we are called to do the same. So Jesus saves by revealing rather than by fixing. In other words, he doesn't have to fix a rift between God and humanity brought about by sin. Rather, he reveals that there's no rift.
Jesus is fully human and fully divine. at the same time. Impossible. And the price we've paid for that is most of us don't realize we are human and divine at the same time.
Jesus is the symbol of what human beings really are, an expression of the non-dualistic unity between divinity and humanity.
Buddhism has enabled me to come to a more non-dualistic understanding of and experience of God, a more unitive experience of the divine. So whatever God is, it's not out there, outside, other. It is what you are.
The vast majority of Western Christians, Catholic and Protestant, still think of God as out there because they have not had any inner experience. The mystical, contemplative, non-dual mind. And I use those three words interchangeably. They're the same thing.
It's not just two. There's a communing, a fusing, where you become aware of the very presence of God in you and as you.
You can't see God because when you are God, there's nothing to see. So consciousness is perhaps all there is, but it's not self-consciousness. It's God manifesting himself, herself, or itself.
We're not individuals.
We, we, or it, are all aspects of the same reality. You and the other are one. Always have been, always will be. You just think that you aren't. And it's this sense of separation from God that is the radical root of all evil. So it's this habit of thinking we're not with God that has to be overcome. And since that's deep-seated, it takes a little time.
We got a lot of unlearning to do. And that's why we teach contemplation, because contemplation is mostly unlearning.
So it's not an external belief system that you believe something.
It's not believing in dogmas or going to church or following some moral commandment.
But a practice, there's nothing to believe. You just go and you know it to be true for yourself.
So how does the belief in non-duality, the no-self, coexist with ancestor worship? The answer is ancient shamanism. In her book, The Shamanic Bones of Zen priest Earthlyn Manuel states that voodoo and Zen are the same thing because they are rooted in shamanism, where ancestors are everything in nature and can be communicated with, including dead people. Buddhism was a path where I found myself communing with ancestors and being guided by them every day. Chanting and meditating opened up a channel between me and the voice of the earth.
This work is both ancestral work and divine work. We become very intimate with the spirits that we call on regularly.
I believe so many of them work through us. Why would we not honor the people who have been stolen from us and are asking for us to fight for them?
If you do not know what libations are in African tradition, they are a pouring of a liquid as a deity to honor, commemorate.
This movement is much more than a racial and social justice movement. At its core, it's a spiritual movement.
For Breonna Taylor! Breonna Taylor! Ashe! Ashe!
When we say the names, that you kind of invoke that spirit, and then those spirits actually become present with you.
You channel the spirit of Malcolm.
The speech is over. I'm going to call cut.
Sitting inside the house.
But he keeps going.
And the house is going to be destroyed. I said the house is going to be destroyed. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
And he kept going for another 5 minutes until finally the film ran out of the magazine. And the stuff that he said was better than Malcolm's words. He prepared a year for that role. Denzel knew he had to be in a space spiritually where Malcolm come in his vessel.
I would just pray every morning, before I came out of that trailer, like, Malcolm, come on, because it's not for me, right? It's for him and for those, hopefully, that he affected. Another one of those characters, but especially that scene where I just went to prayer. I just called on all the spirits of all those who had been beaten. Not that I represent them, and some people might think it was wacky, but that's all I did. I just said, come on with me. I just want to go out here and represent y'all in some kind of way.
Our ancestors are out there.
Right.
And if you're open, we could use that.
If there's anything I can say to actors, that's what's worked for me more than anything else.
I could feel that even that Buddhism itself was almost a blanket, even though it came from Buddha, but how it got transmitted, it was a blanket with a lot of things underneath it. And I think people will, if they understand the shamanism and within the Buddha, where it came from, and all the indigenous cultures that contributed, if not created, some of what we're practicing, it will bring it into the context of the earth and seeing ourselves as earth, as nature, and understanding life. So shamanism, they know that. Shamans know that.